The person you become is what determine the results that you will achieve, the goals that you will hit, the milestones that you will hit. You need to become that person. It's not just enough to set goals, to say, I want to be successful at this. Are you that person that will be successful at it as a result of the things that you do consistently, as a result of the things that you do when nobody's watching you? Hi, and welcome to the Everything Voiceovers podcast. I'm Tcode, an African voiceover talent from Nigeria, and this is my podcast where I take on voiceover topics from an African perspective. In this episode, I talk about goals for voiceover artists and share tips on how they can remain consistent in achieving those goals. Sit back and enjoy this episode. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African perspective. It's Tcode here again, and today I'm going to be talking about your goals and you, and also talking about consistency. Before I go further into this topic for today, I want you to know that I had recorded on a stretch for 32 minutes, doing this over and over, trying to record this episode and making mistakes and losing the line of thought and, just starting all over again. That happened. That lasted for 32 minutes. But guess what? I'm not giving up. And I had to, tell you this because sometimes it looks like, how does he just get into the studio and just talk and do it? But then the truth is, behind every story, or behind every glory, rather, there is a story. So you have to just keep showing up. You have to keep getting better. You have to encourage yourself. You have to keep going. And with that level of determination and consistency, you're going to get there. So having said all of this, your goal and you. So let's say my goal is to release podcast episodes on a weekly. Then there is the me that is going to achieve the goal. Why am I talking about your goal and you today is because I see a lot of voiceover artists and even people generally. This doesn't have to do with just voice actors. We set goals for ourselves. We set goals in our lives, and for one reason or the other, it feels like it's hard to achieve those goals. And while there are many factors that can be responsible for that, one of the factors which I'll be focusing on today, which I think is one of the big reasons why people don't get to achieve their goals, is that they're more goal-centric than, in quotes, becoming centric. And I'm going to break that down to you because this is really important to know. This is equally relevant to voiceover artists. You may be a voiceover artist and your goal is to win certain awards, or your goal is to be featured on or to become voice actors for certain characters, or to become voice actors in certain animation gigs, or to consistently hit a level of income. These are beautiful goals, and in fact your goal may be all of this put together, right? But then a lot of times when we set goals, we are motivated. And it's like we're trying to figure it out and we create, this is what I'll do, this is what I'll do, and this is what I'll do. And after a while, we run out of steam. And after a while, we start asking ourselves the question, can I really do this? You start to doubt yourself. You see another person succeeding at what they're doing, and you're thinking to yourself, probably this wasn't for you. Or you are comparing yourself to that person and you're feeling down already. And then you probably chicken out of it. This happens to some of us. And how can we break out of this system? Well, luckily for me, I have been reading a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I find a lot of things interesting in that book because it has to do with breaking bad habits and building good ones. But then I feel like building habits like James Clear made it known in the book is one of the ways to achieve things in life. Because imagine being able to do stuff on impulse, or imagine just being able to do things without necessarily thinking about them deeply, without feeling burdened by them. You're likely going to go far. You're likely going to be consistent, right? And you're likely going to hit your milestones. So that leads me to consistency. That leads me to talking about building habits. And that also leads us to a very important question as voiceover artists. What are the things to be consistent at? Now, before I talk about what are the things to be consistent at, I'm going to marry this with what I said initially when I said that for me, you have to move from being success-centric to becoming, in quotes. What that means is, I heard somebody say something somewhere. I don't know exactly. I can't remember how they phrased it, but something around, if you see a man who is more interested in walking the walk than getting to the destination, the man interested in walking the walk would get to that destination and even past that destination, than the man who is just conscious about the destination. Is probably going to get to the destination and that's it for him. Or he's probably not going to get to the destination, but keep dreaming that he gets to the destination. So it's more about who you become than what you achieve, because who you become is going to define and determine what you're going to achieve. If you want to become better as a voiceover artist in performing, you have to become a performer. And being a performer doesn't end with doing a gig. Being a performer is you showing up for yourself, taking a script to read, whether you get a gig or not. Every day you do this consistently, back to back, and you're becoming better. That's, for me, how you become better as a performer. And guess what? When you get better and better and better, when the real gigs come, you're going to kill it. You're going to do well, right? So, but then the question again is how to be motivated, self-motivated when you don't get those gigs. You need to fall in love with what you do. And I think that's where passion helps. You need to fall in love with what you do. So when you're in love with what you do, you don't have to be begged to do it. You don't have to get money to do it. You just want to do it. So if it's something you love, or if it's something that has become a habit, it becomes easy to stay committed to it and becomes easy to become consistent with it. Because if you don't do that thing in a day, you're not okay, you're not satisfied. So when you become someone who is in love with what they do, and they do it without necessarily getting the external factors that motivate them, like money or rewards, when the reward is you doing it and hearing yourself, that is a big achievement for me. And I believe that becoming that person itself would lead you to success. Although there are other factors to add to it, like you need to plan your way, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I think becoming that person that can achieve these things is more important than just setting goals and then you get fagged out along the way, and then you return to becoming just that person who dreams. It's easy to dream. What's difficult to do is to build habits, is to stay consistent at doing something over and over and over again, even when it doesn't make sense. So this is the background of which I am building this entire conversation, your goals and you. It's not about telling you the goals that you should achieve, but it's more about me reminding you that for you to achieve your goals, you need to become a goal achiever. You need to become that person who naturally will do these things over and over and over and over and over again, that you just see yourself achieving those goals. So what are the things that you need to do consistently? What are the things that you need to do over and over and over and over again? Depending on what your goals are, they would really determine the things that you should stay consistent at doing. For instance, I'm a podcaster, so my goal in the podcasting world may differ from your goal as a voiceover artist, but I'm a voiceover artist and I'm a podcaster. So I'm going to be taking some cues from my own personal life and sharing it with you guys, so that way I am as truthful and honest as I can be with you all. Because honestly, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just sharing with you my thoughts and how I think this can help you. So, okay, what are the things that I do personally that helps me to become better at what I do as a voiceover artist and or as a podcaster? Well, this did not, all of these things didn't start from today. I had been doing some things consistently way back even as a kid, and some of these things have become habits, while some of them, they are things that I am training my mind to do consistently, and they will become habits over time. About the things that I've been doing since I was a kid. Voice acting. It's funny, right? But yeah, I would see comic characters, I would see cartoon characters, and I'll just lay my voice. And I just do it. I just act them. I just express them, give them life, be very charismatic, be very animatic and stuff like that. And, bring life to that character. So those are things that I loved to do for fun. And I kept doing those things nonstop, even while I was growing up. But it didn't stop the fact that once I saw something drawn, like a comic book, I want to imagine what this guy is going to sound like and give him that, And doing those things over and over and over again taught me to know that for every scene, for every conversation, there were different things going through the character's mind, right? So in this scene, in this page, the character is happy. In the other page, the character is in a war zone. In the other page, the character is in a romantic scene. And I have to give life to every of those scenes, the character in every of those scenes. So my mind was just trained naturally to know how to inflect, to know how to characterize, to use emotions and stuff like that, right? So that's a big win. And I feel like if you want to become an animation voiceover artist in the future, if that's your goal, you need to become that person that nobody begs you before you create a voice for a character and you act it out. You have to love doing it. You have to be deliberate about this, because there are days that you're not going to find characters around you. You're not going to find books. You're not even going to be motivated, but you need to be deliberate. So what I do now that I'm grown up and I don't see too many, I'm not as motivated to go and start characterizing or, start doing voices for characters every time. When I go to the mall and I see a comic book, I buy. So I tend to buy comic books as much as I can. And then I have a few of them in my house, and I could be bored and I just see that comic and I just try to, give character to that comic book, and I read it and I, stuff like that. So there's a place of being deliberate, and also there's a place of passion, and you need to merge both together to form a habit. So that's one of the things that I do. Another thing that I do, or that I used to do and I still do, is I read everything that I see. Okay, not literally, but then as much as possible, I read what I see. Okay, in front of me now, I have a book, Atomic Habits. And it's easy to say, I read what I see. But then the question for me before I read anything is, what is that thing? What does it look like? I look at the thing, I look at the font, I look at the colors, I look at everything that surrounds how that thing was written, and I am able to pick up information from all of this, and those information helps me to determine how to read them. So the way I would read a newspaper is different from the way I would read a commercial. It's different from the way I would read a logo that is on a product. And then the different type of products will determine the different ways that I will read the product. So this is on a more granular level now. We could talk about all of those factors, but then for this conversation, I'm just trying to let you see that I love to read. I spend my time to read the things that I see, and with time, with consistency, I began to realize how to read different things and give different emotions, different characters, different attitudes to the things that I read, not just based on the fact that there are letters or phrases, but many of the circumstances surrounding what was written, why it was written, where it was written, how it is being represented to me, the fonts, and all of those things, right? So yeah, reading is part of it. Animating is part of it. Speaking properly, that's another part of it. So one of the things that I do is, from a very young age, I made a conscious decision that I was going to speak properly, that I was going to, learn about speech. So I took diction classes very serious when I was in secondary school, and that really helped. I remember one holiday, one of my aunties was going to get something for like a holiday gift for myself and my brothers, and they asked what we would love to get. I asked for a dictionary. Now that's very crazy, right? But I knew that I just wanted to get better with the way I spoke. So I asked for a dictionary, and I got the dictionary, and every day I would get words from the dictionary. I had a book called my lexicon book. So I'll get words from my dictionary and I'll write them 2 words at least every day. I'll write the word out, the pronunciation, the meaning of the word, and the usage of the word. And I would ensure that day I infuse those 2 words in my grammar, in my sentences, in the way I speak with people. I was trying to do that consciously. I did that for, I don't know, I exhausted the entire book of lexicon, my lexicon book. So I knew a lot of words and their meanings and how they could be used and how they were being pronounced. That really helped. I'm still talking about speaking properly. Another thing that I did was to listen to the radio and listen to TV. On radio, what I learned more on radio was the Nigerian urban way of speaking, because on radio you'd hear a lot of OAPs. Some would speak with the Nigerian accent induced with a lot of British English, while some will speak with the Nigerian accent induced with a lot of American English or American accent. So whichever one, I was learning the Nigerian system of speaking on radio. But on TV, I was watching the CNNs, the BBC, the Al Jazeeras, the Eurosport, Euronews, even the cartoons, MGM. I was watching a lot of foreign stations just to hear how people speak. So I imported all of those in how I spoke, and it was just a conscious decision. I was conscious about my sentences, I was conscious about my lines, and they helped me a great deal, right? Because at the end of the day, this will help you to read better. This will help you to act better when you know how to speak well. So, speaking well, that's part of the habits that I developed. But then I can't dissociate this also from another habit, which is listening. I had to become a better listener. I had to listen to everybody. For the sake of being a journalist or an OAP, I would listen to radio, I would listen to TV. For the sake of understanding how to become different characters, I would watch movies and listen attentively to the different characters. And I'll also listen to everybody around me. How my father spoke, how my mother spoke, how the market men spoke, how the bankers spoke, how the security men spoke. Everybody had a different way of speaking. How my teachers spoke, how people from different tribes speak. So I had to listen, pay attention, import, save the character of their speech in my mind. Not necessarily because I was going to voice something in those different languages or accents or whatever it is, but then they just kind of broaden my scope, helps me to figure out how different characters are placed. So tomorrow I may see a character and I'm supposed to play that character. I could just tap into my knowledge of someone who I had listened to, and it's easier for me to bring that character to life. So listening is a must for voiceover artists. Other things that I later started picking up as I grew up is learning. So I took a conscious decision to learn. Obviously, that's why I got the dictionary in the first place. But to become a better voiceover artist, I felt like I needed to learn much more than what I knew. And in fact, learning wasn't just limited to voiceovers for me. I just felt like to become better at anything and to become a great person, I need to learn. So that led me to taking courses. I took courses online. I took courses offline. I was just learning about voiceovers as much as I could. I learned about voiceovers and every other thing that I was doing at the time. I kept learning like a sponge. Free courses I would attend, paid courses I would attend. and I was acquiring those certificates, not because I wanted the certificates, but because I wanted to hear from the coaches. I wanted to learn from them. So learning is something that you cannot let go of. And guess what? Learning was what led me to podcasting, or to the podcast world, because I realized that there is a lot to learn from people on podcasts. And well, it depends on the kind of podcast that you're listening to. But for me, 80% of the podcasts that I listen because I want to learn something. So the number one type of podcast that I listen to on any podcasting platform are voiceover podcasts. So I listen to a ton of voiceover podcasts because I want to learn from people who already do voiceovers and have experiences, success stories, to share. That expanded my view of voiceovers and even of podcasts. Some of the best voiceover artists that I know around me, they are people who listen to podcasts a lot, because that's one of the easiest way to learn voiceovers. Trust me, you're not paying a dime to listen, to learn, to take in those information. It's not a webinar where you need to register or you need to pay. You don't need to go to a place like you're going for a conference. You just listen to information, good information on your phone or whatever device that you're using, and it's free. You guys don't understand. It's a good. When I discovered podcasts, it was like a gold mine. And so I have podcasts that I listen to every day. I listen to a podcast every day, an average of 2 to 3 podcasts in a day, right? So to be very honest, there are days that I may not listen, but those days are very, very few. I listen to a podcast every day, and trust me, voiceover podcasts are number one on those lists. Other things that I deliberately tried to work on was things like drinking water. I drank water a lot. At some point, I restricted my liquid to just water. At some point again, I kind of loosened up a bit, but water is on top of my list. When I wake up, the first thing I drink is water. And for many reasons beyond just voiceovers, I learned that it activates your organs and all of that. So water became my friend, and it's still my friend. I also try to avoid certain things, like even water. I don't drink cold water. There are times that I'm not faithful, but 80% of the time, I don't drink cold water. I'd rather take room temperature water. So these are the things that you need to do deliberately. I remember one time, 2 years ago, I created a group and I just added a few of my friends. And what we were trying to do then was, there were these voiceover exercises, and on a daily basis, you had to record the voiceover exercise and send to the group. And we already had those exercises in a diagram. So every day, that's what you just had to do, or you needed to do. Truth is, for a few weeks, we were consistent. We did it. But after a while, people just, went back to whatever they were doing. And I wouldn't blame anybody. People go through different things in their lives. But did we hit that long-term success or goal? Maybe not. But did he make a level of improvement in our voiceover craft? I think I would say definitely yes. Because sometimes today, I want to record and I don't have to think about it. Those exercises are just there in my head. Maybe I'm trying to read something and I'm having some challenges. I know the kind of things that I need to do, adjustments that I need to make. There are some tongue twisters that I just know of it. And I also know their importance. So these things, they were deliberately done. And some of them, I still do them today just to ensure that I get better as a voiceover artist. So I'm sure that listening to the things that I've mentioned, there are things that you would also have learned. You should take consideration of these things, and if possible, you can adjust certain things. You can start doing certain things like podcasting. I think it's number one, and that way you get better at what you're doing. The point I'm trying to make in all of this is that the person you become is what determines the results that you will achieve, the goals that you will hit, the milestones that you will hit. You need to become that person. It's not just enough to set goals, to say, I want to be successful at this. Are you that person that will be successful at it as a result of the things that you do consistently, as a result of the things that you do when nobody's watching you? I say these often. Voiceover trainings in themselves will not guarantee your success. It is the work that you put in yourself, by yourself, that will guarantee success. To balance that, what I mean is that if you have 1,000 coaches telling you what to do, and you don't do any, you're not going to become successful. It's like someone wants to learn how to drive, and all the person does is to sit at the passenger seat and have a coach beside him, and the coach is telling him, this is how you drive, this is what you press, this is how you accelerate, this is how you brake, and stuff like that. If that's all the person listens and hears for a whole month, for 2 months, for 3 months, the person will only have head knowledge. Well, the person will do better than someone who has never used a car. But the day the person is going to try to drive, the person will not still get it as the coach is doing or as someone who drives normally. You need to experience it yourself. You need to be behind the microphone. You need to record. You need to edit. If you need to produce. You need to do these things over and over and over again. You need to be deliberate, because there are times that we lose motivation. We lose that spur that will get us doing these things. I have gotten to that place a lot of times. But what keeps me going? I feel like I owe myself to become better. I owe myself to be happy. Sometimes it's also okay to take a break. It's also okay to, just relax, breathe, and then come back. So that's what I do sometimes. I take a break, I relax, I breathe, then I come back. I try not to let it affect the podcast. The podcast has to keep going. So I find that little window of time when I'm able to, stay productive and I get doing it. And I'm able to, put out episodes and stuff like that. The point is just that you have to stay consistent. Now, there's a word that I haven't really mentioned, which is the word that is very important for us to pay attention to be consistent. That word is system. You need to build a system. So a system is the how. A system is what are the things that you're trying to put in place. What is the plan? That's more like what the system is. So if you're able to build a system around how these things are going to work, it becomes better for you to achieve your goals. So in my own case, I have a system where every morning I wake up, I read some books. After like an hour of reading, I take a 25 minutes walk or jog to my gym, and I gym for about an hour or two, and then I walk back or I jog back to my house. And during my walking to the gym and coming back, I listen to podcasts. So if I spend 25 minutes listening to podcasts on my way to the gym, I spend another 25 minutes listening to the podcast on my way back home. That's like almost an hour already of listening to Voiceover podcasts. So you can imagine how motivated I would be for that day, because I started my morning listening to podcasts. So that inspires me. I also started my morning working out, and that also gives me that achiever's mentality. So those things really help me to fortify my day and stay motivated. I think I've shared enough about my life for an episode. But then, obviously, the goal is to keep you motivated. The goal is to help you understand consistency from my world. And the goal is to help you understand that while the goals are good, while it's okay to set the goal, you matter more. The you that you become is what will determine the goals that you will achieve. I think that's it for today. Finally, after an attempt of over 30 minutes trying to create this episode, I ended up creating this particular episode, and I'm proud of myself. So again, learn not to give up, stay committed, stay consistent, and become the better person that you want to become by doing things deliberately and passionately. Wow. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you want to be part of the Everything Voiceovers community, we're just building a community. It's just very new. check the show notes. The Telegram link is there, and you can join the community. If you have questions, if you want to sponsor the podcast or whatever, you can send an email to everythingvoiceovers@gmail.com. everythingvoiceovers@gmail.com. We'll be happy to go through whatever it is that you want to tell us. I'll also appreciate if you can follow me on social media. Yes, I don't think I've said that before. So my Instagram handle is on the show notes, so you can check that out and follow me. I'd love that. All right, guys. So that's it on today's episode. Till the next episode, I'll say keep voicing and keep staying consistent. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell someone about it. Follow the podcast on Everything VOs on all social media platforms. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode. This podcast is a Coded Voiceovers production.